Welcome, critters. I'm Clara Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 19, Part 1, I believe.
Yes.
And joining me today is Atlas.
Hi. So I'm just going to go ahead and reintroduce myself. Y'all have seen me before, but now I go by Atlas. And everything else is the same. So here we go.
Awesome. All right. So the icebreaker question that I have for today is, if there were 25 hours in a day, what would you spend the extra time doing?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't even notice because I'd be sleeping.
I was laughing as I was asking that because based on our conversation pre-recording, like I could already guess what the answer was going to be because I picked this question before we had that conversation.
Yeah, as a chronically sleep-deprived person, any extra time in my day always goes to sleep.
Yeah. I sleep is something that I've been very adamant about over the years, but I think I would spend that extra hour reading, honestly, just because the more time I can spend reading, the better.
That's fair. If I was actually going to spend it on an activity, I think I would go towards learning new tactile skills. Just because I say tactile skills because I can't pick one of my hobbies. I have too many.
I think tactile skills applies. I mean, that's just like things you do with your hands, right?
Yeah. So expanding that repertoire would make me very happy because that's where all of my awake free time goes anyway.
Yeah, fair. Like I feel like I should say something that's a lot more useful than reading. Because
reading is useful.
Well, it's not like I'm reading personal development books for that extra hour.
Imagination is useful.
I'm reading very trashy romance.
I am very much of the opinion that any reading comprehension of any kind is a very useful skill.
Very true.
And trashy romance novels still require reading comprehension. So. Very
true. Yeah, we have a lot of formulaic bodice rippers out there, and there is a time and place.
Yeah, there's a store near me, a used bookstore, and there's 4 rooms, and 3 of them are the size of like a bedroom, and the 4th is like a warehouse. The entire wall of the warehouse size room is bodice rippers.
Yeah.
And it amuses me every time because it is stocked full and it is popular.
Yeah, we can't really avoid them when you're in the book world.
No, they're everywhere.
I don't know if I would want to.
That's fair.
All right, so please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love to hear your own insights and feelings and stories as well, so comment, like, and subscribe. Ready? All right, let's dive in. Vox Machina have been split into 2 groups as part of a double contract offered by the Slayer's Take in Vasselheim. The first group, comprised of Vex, Percy, Grog, Scanlan, and 2 guest characters, Zara the Red Tiefling Warlock and Lyra the Human Wizard, have journeyed to the north in search of their quarry, an adult white dragon. The last episode ended as they were intercepted by 2 large frost giants at the base of the mountain they believed the dragon to be inhabiting. So they start this one with an initiative roll. Percy goes first and busts out his bad news gun, taking a shot at one of the giants. Grog goes next and shouts out in Giant to try and persuade them to join their side against the white dragon. But Laura, playing in Travis's place, rolls a 1. Vex casts Hunter's Mark on one of the giants and shoots it twice, but misses both times. She then runs and hides with Trinket, while Lyra casts Disintegrate on a giant It fails its saving throw, and she does 80 points of damage. She also uses the very limited giant she knows to try and say, "You are my foe," but it comes out as, "My cat is your friend." That giant then goes and flings a rock at Lyra in return, understandably, hitting her and doing 32 damage. The other giant approaches Scanlan and Zara, hitting them both with its axe. Scanlan then casts lightning bolt at it and inspires Zara. Zara casts mass suggestion and asks them once again to join their side and slay the white dragon together. They seem confused and conflicted, and it is unclear whether the message was accepted or not. She then moves to protect Scanlan with her body. Percy holds his turn, and Grog says in giant, "What say you? Let's fight this bastard together." Vex takes a healing potion while they're all trying to decide what to do, and Lyra holds her turn as well. She does fail her constitution roll, though, and ends up puking from the pain of the previous hit. The giants lower their weapons and tell them that they will take them to the dragon, but that it's at their own folly. Scanlan asks Grog if that means they will carry them there, and the giants laugh at them before heading back into their cave. Vex asks if they can rest first, and Zara lets them know that mass suggestion does last for 24 hours, so they do have time for a rest. Grog asks the giants if they will fight with the group against the dragon, and they say they will take them there, but that's all that they get. Lyra repeats her giant phrase from earlier, saying, "My cat is your friend," and Percy says, "Bless you," to her. The giant spits at Lyra and gives her the stink eye. They decide to take a short rest to heal up a bit while the giants wait for them. Scanlan does a quick level up to a level 11 and gets access to his first 6th level spell. Grog also puts his Chain of Returning onto the Firebrand Warhammer he picked up in the Underdark underneath Craghammer. And Percy asks if the giants have encountered the dragon before and what its disposition is. But Laura rolls another one for Grog's persuasion check as he tries to translate. The giant tells them that the dragon killed all of their people and they have stayed alive by serving it, so they will offer them no help. Zara tries to persuade them further through her mental connection with them, asking if they want to live as slaves, but they keep walking without answering her. They all head further into the cave by the light of Grog's Warhammer and Zara's staff, finding the remnants of an abandoned village that seems to be where the giants used to live with their kin. It is freezing inside, but they continue on. Scanlan thanks Lyra again for the transmuter stone that she gave him to protect him from cold, but she scolds him, telling him not to brag about how warm and toasty he is. She says that her mother always taught her to bring enough for everyone, and so he shouldn't flaunt it in front of the other group members. He says sorry, telling her that he's distracted by missing the love of his life, so maybe she can't relate. She says, "Oh my God, I do relate. In fact, I was just thinking about how much better it would be if Aldor was here with us." She says he smells of sandalwood and dismissiveness. Zara then asks the giants if they would tell her of what happened in this village, learning that their kin were ambushed by the dragon a few years ago when it decided it wanted to make the mountain its home. The large cavern is filled with ice-encased giants frozen in their final death throes. She asks if they have any burial rituals that they would like to perform, but they close themselves off from her, refusing to answer. Zara sheds a tear that freezes on her cheek. Scanlan notices that most of the rubble has been pushed to the center and adhered together into a sculpture of the dragon as a symbol of their fealty. Lyra casts legend lore on the dragon and sees visions of its birth and early years fighting for survival. She also catches glimpses of a previous hunting party trying to take it down unsuccessfully. She senses that this particular dragon is more bestial than others, calling itself Rime Fang. She remembers that she did see a contract come through the Slayer's Take about 8 to 9 months ago, but the team never came back, causing her to wonder how exactly it was decided that they would now be the ones given the contract if the previous, more experienced group failed. She tells the group that she suspects that the guild didn't want them to succeed. Zara asks her if she has any enemies in the guild, and she says that she sometimes makes soup and does people's laundry. Zara asks again how she came to get this contract, and she says she's really not sure. Scanlan asks if she thinks they should abandon the contract, but Lyra tells them that they will be arrested and go on trial if they do. Vex says that Percy is very good at lawyering, with Percy agreeing, but saying that he hopes it doesn't come to that. Zara says that she's here to gain entry into the guild and doesn't want to go on trial. Percy says this changes nothing. They should be confident that they can handle this challenge. The group agrees and they continue on, but they come across an entrance that is blocked by a thick wall of ice. Grog runs straight at it and slams his flaming warhammer into it. A large crack forms and Percy investigates it to find a weak spot, but Lyra interrupts him and casts a firebolt at it. The wall shatters inward and starts falling in giant chunks, forcing Percy, Grog, and Lyra to roll dexterity saves. Percy and Lyra take damage, and she protests that they should rest to heal again before moving forward. Zara peeks again into the giant's head to scope out the dragon's lair, but it lets her know that it's growing uncomfortable with her prodding. As they progress, they come upon a slow incline spiraling upward and covered in ice and frost. Vex spies claw marks along the walls and frozen chunks of flesh half eaten. Lyra gives out ginger chews for everyone feeling nauseous by the stench of rotting bodies. They eventually come upon another wall of ice and Scanlan checks it for traps before Lyra casts another firebolt from afar this time. They start discussing their approach, Lyra informing them that this is a very vitriol-filled dragon and Vex encouraging fire damage. She also tells them that they are completely immune to cold damage and its cold breath is extremely dangerous. Its lair sets it at an advantage as well. Vex asks Lyra to cast Stone Skin on Trinket, which she finally agrees to after a demonstration from the bear saying that he will do anything to protect his Vex. He has a conversation with Zara in Beast's speech, and Vex tells her to tell him that she loves him very much. He nuzzles her and Lyra says she wishes Aldor would do that to her. They proceed forward, but Scanlan is forced to roll a dexterity save as he narrowly misses a trap pit, barely concealed by a thin layer of ice. Vex insists on scouting ahead and checking for traps, Lyra letting them all know that she can cast Featherfall if anyone needs it. Vex does find another pit trap that blocks the entire passage, so she asks Lyra to firebolt the ice wall surrounding it to clear a way through. It succeeds and they continue on. Vex asks the group again how they are going to approach the dragon, if they want to pretend that they are devotees and appeal to its pride. Percy asks if they can take the stealthy route instead, and they discuss it for a while, but they do reach the tunnel that enters the dragon's lair as the giants halt and hesitate to move forward. Zara creeps forward with her dark vision and finds the frozen remains of the previous hunting party before spying into the lair and locating the dragon sitting upon a dais in the center. He speaks to them, telling them to enter, and that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think of this first half?
I love these episodes so much.
Yeah.
Because they mix it up. And, that's what everybody says about Trial of the Take. But I think the most interesting part for me with this was watching how they plan, but they forget to take into account the people they don't have. They kind of plan in the same way, but it takes them until something happens to remember that they need to compensate for Vax not being there. And they plan, but they don't know their guest spells like they would Keyless or stuff like that. So they're kind of floundering the entire way because this group isn't what they're used to and they haven't really figured out how to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think that's also compounded by Lyra and Zara being relatively new players, like Felicia and I'm blanking on her name.
Mary Elizabeth,
thank you. Because they also aren't really integrated with the group, like character-wise as well as player-wise. And I think that compounds the issue as well. Like Lyra not moving after disintegrating the giant was a big false move on her part because she instantly got slammed by that rock as a result. And I think that's a newbie fail.
There's definitely a lot of newbie things that happen in these couple episodes because the players are so new. I think for Mary Elizabeth, this is her first time playing. And I think Felicia's got a little bit more experience, but not a ton.
Yeah.
Um, but it does also show us kind of a master class of how to integrate a new player and how to introduce a new player to the game. Like, we know that Mary Elizabeth goes on to have a very long running home game after this. And I would be so intimidated by having my first experience with a game like this be on a stream.
Yeah.
And I know they were smaller then. It's still Geek and Sundry, which was a huge company at the time. It was like the force in nerddom.
Yeah.
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 So
I mean,
it's impressive.
And I'm interested to see too how much of a difference there is between Mary Elizabeth as a person and Zara as a character as well. Because we get a feel for like the difference between player and character a lot with Vox Machina because we're exposed to them time and time and time and time and time and time again.
Right.
But we don't know much about, at this point in time, Marie Elizabeth as a person. And that's something that I also find really interesting with Felicia and Lyra as well, is like, how much is them and how much is the character as well? Because I think Felicia also makes the intentional choice to lean into her character's flaws.
Fair. Yeah.
You know,
I know a little bit more about Felicia's career than I do Mary Elizabeth.
yeah, same.
And this Lyra, this character, fits very well into the archetype that Felicia Day is very well known for.
Yeah.
And I think part of why she plays that so well is because a lot of it comes from her and is very natural.
Yeah.
But she definitely plays it up when she's in character and kind of lets those pieces of herself run wild. And I think for a lot of people, that is how their first few D&D characters are. You know, you pick an aspect of yourself and lean into it. And that's what makes the character different from you, is that they're just more of something.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like, going back to your original point in terms of like, they are off kilter because they're not used to not having certain party members. It almost goes back to their experiences in Craghammer. Like, it was a lot more chaotic. It was a lot more happenstance and like falling into things.
Yeah.
So then like intentionally approaching something with a strategy. Like, they never actually came up with a plan.
Yeah, they just kind of went.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of see that expanded into the actual group with Travis being gone.
Yes.
Because one, he's their strategist.
Yeah.
And that is hard to do without when you don't have your other players that you can fall back on. I think especially of this group, Travis is the strategist. Sam will get there, but isn't yet.
Yeah.
And the only other real strategist that they have at this point tends to be Keyleth, because she's the one who has to do the most spell management. And she's not with this group.
Yeah.
So, one, players are irreplaceable because the way that they're playing Grog is not how Grog would be played if Travis was here at all. Love what they do with it. It's not how it would have gone if Travis's flight had been on time. Just gonna say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you make an excellent point with Keyleth having to prepare her spells too, is because like Percy doesn't have to prepare anything. Does Scanlan have to prepare? I don't know if bards.
I don't think so. I think bards have locked in spells. I think Druid and Cleric are the only ones that have ones that they rotate daily.
Necromancers and alchemists do as well. I just know that because of my current party that I'm DMing for.
That's fair enough. Those ones I don't know as much about.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of classes can like switch them out at levels or are stuck with those spells permanently.
Yeah.
But there are very few that trade them out daily, and Bard is not one of them.
Yeah. So Sam doesn't really have to plan ahead. And then that just leaves Laura and Travis. Laura doesn't have to plan ahead, and Travis, I mean, Grog never plans, but Travis does.
Travis does. And I think Grog does to some degree. I argue that Grog's wisdom score is tactical, because he has a low intelligence, but a higher wisdom. He's actually up above Scanlan, and a couple other players. And I think that he has a tactical wisdom, like a functional wisdom that comes into that score. And that's where he gets away with being the tactical voice of the party.
Yeah. I wonder if it comes off as like street smarts.
Yeah, kind of that idea.
Like he's got a bit of common sense, a little bit, like more of like, I know how to navigate the world at large, more so than I know what 2 + 2 equals.
Yeah, I think he has an intuitive sense of how a fight is going to happen, and how that might affect him and his team, tribe, group, whatever he's working with at the time. But you ask him to do anything with a book or with math or even elaborate what those ideas mean, and he's not going to be able to do it because he doesn't have that capacity, but he has the knowledge.
Yeah. And like I asked about the difference between Zara and Mary Elizabeth earlier because I'm very curious about Zara's insistence on prodding these giants. Like now that she has this mental connection with them established, like she almost abuses it
a little bit. Yeah.
And that's interesting. Is that a conscious choice of Mary Elizabeth?
That's a good question. I don't know, but it's also, I kind of wonder if it's another newbie thing of there's a way to get all of the information that's here, and really pushing it farther than you maybe would otherwise, because you haven't really seen the consequences in the game, or because you're new to the story and are learning the limitations of what you can do. And I kind of wonder if part of it is that, but also it could very easily be a personality trait of just pushing a little bit too far.
Yeah,
or a combination.
Because as I was asking that, I thought back to her comment that she makes in the previous episode of her father keeping her in a cage. So like, maybe that's just how she's learned how to interact with people, is a very forceful approach. Because she even kind of does that with Vex throughout this. Like we've talked about the sass that goes on between them throughout these episodes. And like maybe that's just how she relates to people, is like forceful, pushing the boundaries, kind of having this like stimulating, prodding.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what she said in the last episode, she definitely has that background of having to fight for herself, and to become a force to be reckoned with, to be alive, essentially. And I could see her communication style stemming very much from that. That would make sense.
It'd be hard not to be affected by being kept in a cage.
I mean, that's hard to argue with.
But I honestly want to know more about that dynamic, because it does rub me the wrong way. Like, I'm not a fan of it, to be completely honest. That's not my judgment call to make.
I mean, it's uncomfortable, but knowing where Zara ends up, I love her, and I can get through this rough introduction. But it's not the most appealing introduction. But she does blossom into a character that I really, really love.
Like I just want more of a peek into her internal motivations as a character. I don't think we get time to.
No, we definitely don't.
And like Lyra, I think Lyra's very upfront with her motivations. Like it's Aldor, 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 Aldor.
Yeah.
And so there's no questioning where her behaviors stem from, honestly. Like, especially like as she's leading the group, like it's really interesting to see her grapple too with this sense of like, can I be a leader, but also be disregarded at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. I find Lyra's situation with leadership incredibly interesting and incredibly relatable. But she also is struggling with the fact that she's trying to lead a group that doesn't know her, doesn't need a leader, has their own. Both of the leaders of Vox Machina are in this group. So it, of all groups for her to try to manage, this is not the one that's going to take well to it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm instantly thinking of parallels that are now happening in campaign 3. So I don't know if I want to necessarily touch on those at the moment.
That's fair, but I know what you're getting at.
There are parallels.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. Is like, what kind of personal experiences are coming to mind for us as we absorb this episode?
I got very stuck on Lyra as like a personally relatable thing because it is so hard to move into a leadership role, especially if you're used to a very different role within an organization.
Totally.
You know, she's used to being the gopher essentially and just trying to keep up, and now she's in charge.
Yeah.
And trying to move into that role and be confident in herself and confident in her leadership is just not happening. And I don't know if it's just because of, you know, stuff that is happening in my personal life, but I found that incredibly relatable. I'm moving towards more management duties in my job, which is great for a career goal, but I started here as a student. A lot of people still see me as a student. It's really hard to turn that into a leadership role, and do it effectively without coming across as Lyra and this, you know, having to remind yourself what position you're in and take on that leadership role, whether it's comfortable or not.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like the one line that she says throughout this half is like, can I do that? Oh, wait, I can. I'm the leader.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, I relate to that so hard.
Yeah.
Like, because for so much of our lives, like the first 2 decades, essentially, we're taught to ask for permission first in pretty much everything we do, right? Because we're the ones that are managed.
Yeah.
For the first 2 decades. And then we get to like our 20s, or our 20s is the 3rd decade. I had to think that first. We get to our 20s and people are like, you get to decide. And I'm like, but I don't have decision-making skills. So like
I never learned how to do that.
Yeah. I remember I had this happen when we were choosing colleges in high school. Like junior year was the year I went to a college prep high school. And so they really shoved it down our throats that we had to like pick colleges really early on. And so I remember doing a bunch of college visits with my dad during junior year, because I applied, the summer between. And I kept saying to him, like, I don't know how to choose. Like, I don't know how to choose a college. Like, all of these colleges seem cool.
Right. They're all interchangeable.
Yeah, like they all have programs that I would be like relatively satisfied doing. Like they all have campuses that are like suitable for my needs. Like,
yep.
How do I choose between all of these different colleges that are at my disposal? And like he kept saying, like, it's a gut feeling. It's a gut feeling. Like you just have to like trust your intuition. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what is this gut that you speak of?
Everybody says that, but I would argue that intuition is a skill that we need to learn, and we do not.
Exactly, because we're not taught to pay attention to it for the first 2 decades, because we're just taught to follow what we're told for the first 2 decades.
Yeah. And any skill not used atrophies to the point where it doesn't
Exactly.
exist.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what it means to do a gut check. Like, I can look at my stomach. What are you talking about? And like, he just kept saying like, you'll know. And like, eventually I did arrive at a college and do a tour where I was just like, okay, yes, I understand it. This is the place I want to be. Cool. But no one prepared me for that up until that point. And I can definitely relate to that with Lyra's journey in this episode. It's being like, wait, I have to make decisions. I have to make decisions.
And I get to make them on my own, or I have to make them on my own, which are interchangeable things. Blessing and a curse.
Yeah, super interesting. So what are we going to do because of this?
I think that my biggest takeaway was to just lean into uncomfortable situations that I feel unprepared for, and do what I can, and do my best, and not wait for other people to validate the fact that I can do these things. Which is easier said than done.
Yeah. I mean, adulting. It's hard, and there's no how to adult handbook.
That would be helpful.
I almost wrote one, and then I, hit a depressive episode. So
that would do it. Yeah.
I was like, JK. But yeah, I mean, what am I going to do about this? I think it's just also for me, because Zara's character does rub me so wrong in these episodes. Like, I just keep getting, it feels abrasive to me, the way that she interacts with the world around her. I think I also just have to practice like letting people be people.
Yeah.
Just letting them, because obviously she's going through her own shit. All of these characters are going through their own shit, and they're coping with it in different ways.
Yeah. She's
like,
in this situation for a reason. Who knows what it is?
Exactly. And so I have to practice just accepting people where they're at and being like, okay, this isn't a reflection of me. This isn't a reflection necessarily of even the situation that we currently find ourselves in. It's all of the things that happened up until this point that is affecting this person's behavior and approach and attitude in this situation that we find ourselves in. And so like, just having practice to be like, they're on their own journey. And like, it's not my responsibility to help them on this journey either.
Yeah.
B, I don't need to superimpose my idea of how they should be in this moment at this time. Like,
yeah,
that's not my place to do.
Yeah. You can't always embrace people for where they're at, but you can accept them for where they're at.
Yeah.
And I think that distinction gets lost a lot. Of like, you have to fully commit to, wherever people are. But no, what you're saying is you can just say, okay, that person is doing something I don't like, but it's not actively harmful. So I'm just going to leave it be, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. And I don't need to give advice every single time either.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up with some family members who are notorious for unsolicited advice. Like, all the time. Every conversation with them is just like a list of unsolicited advice pieces.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And so I grew up thinking that that's how you respond to people. And so I had to have very painful conversations with friends over the years of them sitting me down and being like, look, I'm just coming to vent. I don't need you to like offer me solutions in this moment. Like, just listen to me, ask questions, but don't like superimpose advice onto me.
Yep.
That is a continual practice for me, honestly. Like, I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it, even though I've been having these like intervention conversations with friends since high school. Like, it's still a continual practice for me to be just like, yes, I'm just here with you in the moment, and that's what you ask.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of habit that is so hard to break.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's such a knee-jerk reaction of being like, oh, just try this, or oh, just try that, or have you checked out this? It's a hard habit.
Yeah.
Well, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I'm excited for next week because we get to see a dragon.
Yeah, dragon fights are always very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there in the name. They're one of the highlights.
Yeah, you can't really do D&D without dragons. So.
No. Yeah, you gotta embrace the dragons. I love dragons.
Yeah, and there has been a theme of white dragons over these campaigns.
Yeah, there are so many white dragons. Yeah, it fascinates me.
Yeah. All right, well, these are powerful themes that we're talking about. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and stories and insights with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. And special thanks to Atlas for joining me on this episode. It's been a pleasure.
It's always good to be here.
All right, so next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 19, Part 2, and joining me again will be Atlas, so I'm excited for that. And I'm always looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in coming on this podcast and sharing your perspectives, please reach out to me. I'll send you the link. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at SacredReadingCR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and always, always, always remember to love each other. Take care, guys.
Bye.